Hello, Helen here. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be making this card. It's going to have dimensional flowers on it, so I'm going to start off by stamping a whole lot of flowers and leaves. So I need 4 of the main flower, and I'm just going to stamp the outline stamps and quite a few leaves. I'm not sure how many I'm going to need, and then just a few of the flower sprigs. So I'm going to just stamp a whole lot and then start colouring them in. I'm doing all my stamping on Strathmore Bristol smooth watercolour paper because I'm going to be using my zigs to colour them in, and I'm stamping with VersaFine Onyx black ink and clear embossing powder for the outlines. So now that I've finished all the stamping and I've done the heat embossing, I'll start doing the colouring. Colouring I'm doing with the zigs is just using the palest colour to do any of the blending. I'm using the other 2 colours to do some shading in where the petals bend over or a petal is slightly behind another one. Otherwise I'm just using the palest colour to blend out these other colours. It's not difficult, it's just a little bit time consuming going around each petal, but I really enjoy the colouring. For a full list of the colours that I've used, I'll have a link to my blog underneath the video, and that will take you to a list that I use of all the products I've used in the video. I always have this at the bottom of my videos, and there's always a blog that explains what I've done and also all the materials I've used to do the cards, so always check that out if you're interested. I've used 2 different yellows to do the centres of the main flowers, and then when I come to do the leaves I've used 3 different greens for that, but I've kept it pretty simple with the shading. I've used the stamp as the guide, so where it's got some lines to make it look like shading, then that's where I've added the dark colour. So I've really been led by the artist and who drew the flowers to where I should be putting the shading. I think you always should be using them as your guide, really. I'm going to go ahead and finish all the colouring, and then I'm going to fussy cut them all out. Now when I'm fussy cutting something like this out, I find it's easiest if I go in and cut all the inward little sharp parts. So I'm cutting like little triangles into where the petals join, and cutting all them out, which then reduces the amount that you've got to cut around the rest. I find this a little bit easier than going, from one point and working your way right round something like a flower. So I go around and cut all the wedges out, and then I go back and cut all the outer part of the petals. Now when I'm fussy cutting the leaves, I do it completely the opposite. If I was to cut the centre parts out of, round all the little stems, then it would make it quite weak while I'm trying to cut around the leaves. So what I do is cut around the leaves first, and then leave the internal parts where the stems of the leaves and where the joiners all are, and then I go back and do them last. It just means that I'm not weakening it as I'm turning it around, cutting it, and it just saves you cutting off pieces that you shouldn't as well. I apologise that you can't see clearly what I'm doing. I should have had the leaf a little bit flatter when I was cutting it so that you could actually see what I was doing. Sorry about that. Now this is a few days later. I didn't get to finish the card like I normally would have, and life got a bit in the way, so I've ended up leaving it a few days and coming back to it. So now I'm going to just go around with a black pen. It can be really any kind of ink pen, and I'm going to go around and blacken just the edges where you can see the white card. This just neatens up the whole thing. Once I finish that, I'm going to put those aside and get on with doing my card base and getting that ready. So I've got a dark red card base here, and I'm going to do a front panel, but I'm going to cut a border down the bottom with a Spellbinder's A2 border die. It's one of the scallop borders. It's quite an old die, so I'm not sure whether you can still buy it or not, but I think that it's important to carry on using some of the older things that you might have, so any border would work with this card. So I'm going to just do a simple scallop border at the bottom, and I'm using white card to do that. And then I'm going to roughly lay out my flowers just so that I can see where they're going to go on the card, so that I can work out where I will end up doing my sentiment. And then I'm going to stamp the sentiment on that. Now any sentiment would do for this card, but I'm trying to build up my Mother's Day selection because I always get asked from colleagues at work whether I've got any Mother's Day cards, so I'm going to do this one as a Mother's Day card, but it would work just as equally as a birthday card or any other occasion for a female, really. The next thing I'm going to do is do some shaping with just my fingers with the outside of the petals and the leaves, just very slightly sort of bending the paper without doing it too severely and getting a crease. Just want to get a little bit of a curve at the ends of the flowers and give them a little bit of dimension. I'm going to then, with the second part of the flower, the top layer, I'm going to trim with the scissors down each petal that would look like it's in the foreground, and I'm going to shape that just slightly more than the ones that will be in the background. Shaping the leaves, I'm just holding the centre of the each leaf with my thumb, and with my two fingers of the other hand I'm shaping the leaf around my thumb nail, just to give a little bit of shape. But you've got to be really careful that you're holding on to the leaf and not the stems, otherwise you can break the leaves off. They're quite fine, so just be careful with that. But just a little bit of shaping's all it needs. I've put some foam tape onto the back of my scalloped card panel, and I'll stick that down onto the card base with some double-sided tape. And then I can start sorting out how I'm going to have my arrangement. So I'll put the top layer of the flowers onto the bottom layer with some Scotch foam tape, which is a little bit thinner, and because I don't want a lot of dimension. And then I'm going to tuck in the leaves and the flower sprigs around it until I'm happy with the arrangement. That's my card finished. I hope this has given you some ideas of some other ways you might be able to use some of the floral stamps that you might have already. It doesn't have to be this beautiful day one, it can be any flower stamp really, that you just have a look at what you've got. I'll leave some videos of some other cards I've made using the same stamp set at the end of the video. Also there'll be if you click on the picture of me, that will take you to subscribing to my channel if you haven't already. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.